being able to meet like this is the highest purpose of the internet. It's such a wonderful blessing. I feel such deep gratitude. Thank you. You mentioned in your last dream that everyone you see is just a part of your own mind, so that anyone you don't like represents something about yourself you don't like, because it's you essentially, something like that. Sorry if I'm not remembering or explaining it right, but I wanted to ask, do other people have independent existence outside of our own mind? How are my friends, my family, all just me? Maybe you could explain that a little. I don't know all the science of it. I'm sure in like 50 or 100 or 200 years' time, they're going to be able to explain it. But from your experience, Tim, they never appear outside of you. They only ever appear inside of you as consciousness, as inside of you as your consciousness or your experience. They're not outside of your experience. And when you think about your family now, you only know them as an image inside your head. So that's one thing. They're always appearing only in your experience. They never appear outside of your experience. You don't know them outside of your experience. The whole entire life, you only know that one experience. And then your brain, like we don't understand how the brain works. Like in quantum physics, even though I really don't understand quantum physics, and I'm sure I don't get it right, it suggests that everything is a possibility until it's looked at. And that it's dependent to an extent, or maybe even completely, to the subject which is looking at the object as to how the object appears. So that's really like mind-blowing, and that's not non-duality, that's science that is exploring this. But science is constantly evolving, it's not a fixed thing, and it's all determined on what we decide to measure it against, so it's like limited within our constructs. But that's really amazing, that possibility. But then also, so we look at that, and then you also look at the way your brain works. Like our brains only are interpreting 6 senses. So they're interpreting sound, sight, so hearing, sight, taste, touch, and smell, and then also the thinking mind, so the 6 senses. So they're interpreting, your brain is interpreting those 6 senses. So dependent on the way that your brain smells something is what you experience as that smell. Dependent on the way you see something is the way that your brain is seeing it. It could look completely different to a bumblebee, to a dog. There isn't a fixed object out there. There's objects which are interpreted by our brain and seem to be interpreted by our brain. We don't actually know if they exist outside of our brain or not. This could all be happening inside of our brain. We don't actually know. But what we can say in our simplistic language is that everything you see is interpreted through your brain. So the colors you see, the shapes you see, the objects you see, the density that you see, the space, the time that you experience is all an interpretation of your brain. So therefore, whoever you see, so say somebody's standing in front of you screaming and shouting at you like bear, 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 that could be described as an act, but even describing it is down to our own particular description, isn't actually what's happening. Like to a dog, that person's not screaming. To that dog, it's just like bear, 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 bear. So, and then your brain interprets it so it's good or bad or right or wrong, or you like or you don't like her. Like in actuality, it's neutral. It's experience happening, and then your brain puts all the interpretations onto it as to what you actually see and experience. So everything is an interpretation of your brain. And we don't know if there is outside of our brain or outside of experiencing. We can never determine that. Even if we record other experiences, we still only see it inside our brain or inside our experience. So all of these things are left as big question marks. What we do know, what our current experience is that there is one experience and there's no inside or outside. There is just that experience, and that you aren't separate from the experience. You never can pull yourself out from the experience and be like, oh, here I am, and there's the experience, and I've separated them out. You and experience simultaneously come together or go together. So I don't know if that makes it any clearer. I'm sure that's super complex. And what I believe in is that the way in which you're interpreting things also determines things. So, but this is also, again, a belief, and you don't have to believe that. It's not fact. I don't know at the end of the day, but my belief, or the way that I see things, is that the way that you're interpreting things is the way that you attract things towards you. So if you're always feeling a victim, then you tend to attract perpetrators. If you're always feeling poor, then you tend to attract victimhood with money or lack of money. If you're a perpetrator, then and you want to harm people, although I don't think people consciously want to harm people normally, but some do, then you'll attract that. You'll attract harm, and you'll harm others too, and bring that into your experience. Which is quite a full-on thing to say, because it's really uncontrollable, the mind. It's not you controlling it. So then the mind thinks, oh fuck, I've got to always be thinking good things, or I've got to be thinking this or that. Whereas it's actually just appearing. It's outside of your control. It's a happening. I do get the sense that the more that you begin to see who you are, the dream more than likely becomes more positive, but not necessarily. Thanks, Tim, for your question.